The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. This is Emily DeCramer speaking. I'm staff member at U.S. Zero Waste Business Council / GBCI. I will be introducing the webinar today and then handing it over to our moderator, Holly Elmore. But first, before we dive in, I just wanted to do a little quick orientation to those of you who may be unfamiliar with the GoToWebinar system. So if you want to make your GoToWebinar screen or window bigger, in the upper left-hand corner, you do have a zoom feature there. So if you want to zoom in more, zoom in less, you can do that. On your panel here on the right-hand side, you have some key features to interact with us during the webinar. So in order to minimize and maximize this panel to the left and the right, you just click on this orange arrow here. We ask that you submit your questions as you think of them during the webinar, and you do that via the questions box here. And also, if your GoToWebinar window seems to have disappeared and you can't find it, simply go down to your taskbar and click on the GoToWebinar icon in the taskbar there to bring it back up to the front. So just for a reminder, I know there are some of you on today that are not members currently. So becoming a member means that you have unlimited access to recordings of these webinars and to the presentation files. So this case will be a little different. I'll explain a little bit later. You also have access to an extensive online zero waste resource library. We provide recognition for members on our website. We have an online member directory, as well as discounts to all of our events and our zero waste facility certification and professional accreditation program. As of November 1st, U.S. Zero Waste Business Council is actually officially a part of a U.S. Green Building Council, more specifically the GBCI wing of U.S. Green Building Council. So in order to access all of these benefits, you need to join as a member of U.S. Green Building Council. So as a member of U.S. Green Building Council, you'll have access to everything here and also get all the wonderful benefits that U.S. Green Building Council members receive as well. If you're already a member of U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, you should have received an email about transferring your membership over to U.S. Green Building Council. So we hope you sign up so you can access the recording of this webinar and some of the other great zero waste resources we have available for you. So we will have a webinar series next year. It's typically the second Thursday of each month. Stay tuned for that. We'll release details hopefully sometime in the next few weeks. And we also ask that you save the date, Tuesday, January 24th. We're going to be doing an introductory Zero Waste 101 workshop in New York City. And the following day, we're going to be doing our professional scorecard training course. So this is not only one of the steps to earning our professional zero waste business associate credential, but it's also a great course to learn about our zero waste facility certification. We go in detail with the scorecard and some other items that are related. So if you're interested, we should be getting that registration up pretty soon in the next week or so. In the meantime, save the date. Keep an eye out on your email. We'll make an announcement. As I mentioned before, we are recording the webinar today, and it will be available on our website for members to log in and view. For this particular webinar, the presentation files will be made available to our members on our member pages, but also Elemental Impact will be hosting the PowerPoints on their website for you to access as well. And our moderator today, Holly Elmore, will give a little more detail on that in just a moment. Just a reminder to stay connected with us. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and we have a LinkedIn group and company page. Our group's very popular and lots of great discussions there. So we hope you join us to get all the latest news and information. Our contact information and website is also listed there as well. Okay. And with that, we're going to launch into the webinar today. Our two speakers are Holly Elmore, founder and CEO of Elemental Impact, and Susan Collins, president of Container Recycling Institute. And just as a reminder, please type in your questions as you think of them during the webinar, and we will address them towards the end. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Holly.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate it, and I am honored that the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council / USGBC, love doing those together, is hosting this Recycling the Business Case webinar. Starting mid to late last year, Waste Management and some of the other big haulers went to the media and were setting the stage that we were in a recycling crisis. And that pained me deeply because Elemental Impact, one of our foundations, is setting out zero waste and recycling as making good, solid business sense. And so we wrote an article, the Zero Waste in Action blog published. It was a recycling or contamination crisis, an article series, was published in time to promote this webinar today. And where we're going to take you is my good friend Susan Collins, who I have an immense amount of respect for, with the stated the president of the Container Recycling Institute, is going to give you where we are, what is the scenario right now, how did we get there, and then solutions that work for recycling in the municipalities. Then the baton will pass back to myself, and we'll go through Elemental Impact and focus on business success cases and go through the pathway to creating a recycling profit center, and then end with case studies. And with that note, I'd like to turn it over to, again, my friend Susan Collins, with the president of the Container Recycling Institute, and to take the baton. Susan?
Holly, thank you. That was such a warm introduction. And hello to everyone. I'm excited to be on this webinar today and to share with you some reasons why recycling is important, and some ways it can go wrong, but then also some hopeful slides at the end on how it can go right. So to start with, just to give you a perspective and a little bit of background about the Container Recycling Institute, our mission statement is here. We're striving to make North America a global model for the collection and quality recycling of packaging materials. And the word quality is very important, and I'm going to show you on the next couple of slides why it is so important. So a little bit more about CRI. The way that we accomplish our mission is by creating and maintaining a database on containers and packaging. And that's on the next slide. We also study container and packaging reuse and recycling options and legislation, and we look at their environmental and economic impacts. We also educate on recycling options for all of the various stakeholders that are involved in recycling, and we create national networks. So we don't just do the research, but we make sure that we do as much education as possible so that our research just sit on a shelf, but it actually goes into action. So on the next slide, this is what I call recycling nirvana. How can we collect the most materials at the highest quality levels so that they can be made into products again at the lowest cost? So if we're constantly striving for excellence in each of those three areas simultaneously, that's when we hit the high point in recycling. Now the next slide, I'm going to talk about why recycling is important. So we'll click through here. Recycling is more than just diversion from disposal. It has been framed as keeping materials out of landfills, and that has been a talking point for decades. But it turns out there's something far more important than that, and that is that there are upstream environmental benefits that are 10 to 20 times greater than downcycled or disposal options. So when a product is made from recycled material, the use of virgin materials is not required, and that means we get to skip all of those initial steps of extraction and transport and processing of virgin materials. And that's where the vast majority of the upstream energy, the upstream greenhouse gas, the upstream emissions, the upstream production of toxics, the vast majority of those impacts occurs in these initial extraction, transport, and processing of virgin materials. So if we can take materials that have already been turned from, being pulled out of the ground, or trees that have been cut down and they get turned into a raw material, if we can just keep reusing those raw materials over and over again instead of creating them from scratch, the savings are tremendous. So there's a slide, the next slide sort of shows this in a different way. This is a study that was done by the US EPA, and when this came out, it blew my mind because I had no idea that so much of the production of greenhouse gases in this country was coming from the production of our goods. And it was because nobody had ever counted it the right way until this study came out. They looked at things as being very separate entities. They looked at the transportation sector. They looked at the energy sector. They looked at materials going to landfill, and they counted each one of these as a separate thing. And when this study came along, it was because some very smart people asked the question, well, why is there a transportation sector? If all those trucks are driving around from state to state all the time, what is in the trucks? And once they assigned the transportation portion, the energy portion, to its actual use, this is what they found out, that the vast majority of our greenhouse gas emissions in this country come from producing and using our stuff. It's these two red pieces of this pie, and it's 37% plus 7%. That equals 44%. So almost half of the greenhouse gases that we're producing in this country come from producing our stuff. When I say greenhouse gases, if you don't want to talk about greenhouse gases and you want to talk about energy use or the production of toxics or other types of emissions, you can just sort of substitute those words in because the same general relationships apply. So that's why recycling is so important. And on the next slide, I'm going to show just one quick example that does this for one product type. And you don't have to look at this slide really carefully. You just have to look at the fact that the bar on the far left of the slide, where only 3% recycled content is being used in the production of that product, you can see that there's a lot more greenhouse gas produced when you're only using 3% recycled content. And then way over on the right side of the slide, if you use 100% recycled content, the greenhouse gas production goes way down. That's the relationship that you should get from this slide. This particular example is for PET bottles, but the same type of reduced greenhouse gas production is true no matter what material type I'm showing you. On the next slide, you'll see also the energy impacts of wasting, and this is pretty amazing. In total, 2.3 million American homes could have had all their energy needs met with the amount of energy required to replace the beverage containers that were wasted in 2010. Meaning, if we would just recycle all of our beverage containers, it produces enough energy to power 2.3 million American homes. And that's just beverage containers. So you can see that recycling has this tremendous positive impact. So how does the processing, on the next slide, result in either good outcomes or bad outcomes? Most of the time, when people's knowledge of this just goes through the stages 1 and 2 on this slide. Stage 1 here is the collection process. Stage 2 is the MRF process, which is the material recovery facility, where all of the materials get sorted out. What most people don't know is that even after all that sortation happens and the materials go to the secondary processor, which is step number 3, so it either goes to the aluminum smelter or the paper mill or the glass beneficiation facility, etc. Those secondary processors still end up with a lot of contamination coming in with their main product, and they still have to go through a cleaning process to clean out the cross-contamination. And our research has shown that the cleaning out of contamination that happens through the secondary processors is twice as much as what happens in the first stage. So if you add up first stage and second stage contamination, it's quite a bit larger than most people thought. The next slide shows what this looks like for glass. This is a visual example of what I'm explaining. This is glass as it is delivered to a glass beneficiation facility, where the purpose of this is for them to break down the glass into uniform sized pieces and to color sort the glass for use by a manufacturer. The picture on the left shows whole glass bottles that are delivered from either container deposit programs or from drop-off sites. So that's the ideal. That's what they're looking for. It's almost perfectly clean glass. And then the picture on the right looks like a pile of trash, but it's actually the glass that got delivered from a material recovery facility. And it looks like there's nothing but paper and plastic in there. To be fair, that's what it looks like because the paper and plastic is lightweight and it sort of floats to the top of the pile during transportation. But there's a lot of glass in that pile, but you can see how clearly that's a lot of contamination. It's a lot of materials that are not glass that need to be cleaned out of that pile. And the cleaning process is very time-consuming, labor-intensive, machine-intensive, and very expensive. Next, we'll look at, I'll go sort of quickly through these next few slides. Paper here, the average contamination level is 18%, or the average loss level, and some of that is contamination and some of it is collateral damage, and I'll show you how that works. The next slide is a picture. It's incoming material to a paper mill. Now, to be fair, the main pile did look like a pile of a bunch of paper, but I wanted to take photographs around the edge of the pile to explain to all of you what some of the contamination looks like. And in this picture, you can see there's some shrink wrap that was around a case of bottled water. There's a bag, a plastic bag. There is a plastic milk jug. All of these things didn't make it through the right sortation at the single stream MRF, and they all came into the paper mill, and they weren't supposed to be there. The next slide is pretty similar, except that it's after processing. So at this point, the paper has gone through the pulping process, water has been mixed in, the paper has been turned into something that's like a paper sludge, and pushed through screens. And these are all the items that were too big to be pushed through the screens. So they got screened out, which is what you want. But what you don't want is what you see here, which is a whole bunch of perfectly good paper sludge that should have been turned into paper again, is now stuck to these materials that got screened out. So the double tragedy here is that the paper mill has to pay for the processing of all of these materials that they never wanted in the first place, and they're losing some of the perfectly good material that they did want to purchase and turn into paper again. The next slide is similar. It just shows a little more detail. Here you can see a lot of aluminum cans. And the tragic thing here is that the consumers who put these aluminum cans in their recycling bins had every intention of recycling these aluminum cans. Another tragedy is that the aluminum industry desperately wants these aluminum cans so that they can make new aluminum cans again. And then lastly, the paper mill had to purchase this material, and now it's no good to anybody, and it must go to landfill because it's just a dirty mess of materials that can't be separated from each other. So on the next slide, I'm just showing the percentages that we've gotten from the aluminum industry and surveying them, asking them what their losses are. And for aluminum, it's a range of 2 to 11%. On the following slide, another study that was done in the state of California that shows that the aluminum loss level there is around 5–5.5%. And on the following slide, you can see that for PET, it's been getting worse over time. They call it utilization, the amount that they're actually able to get out and utilize of what they purchase. The blue line is recycling. That's what they purchased into the PET reclaimers. And for a while, the two lines had a pretty fixed distance between them, meaning there was a fixed level of contamination that persisted for many years. But you can see on the right side of the slide that those two lines have gotten farther and farther apart every year because those facilities are receiving more and more contamination every year. The next slide shows the PET bale composition. This is a study that was done in California. Shows that about 15% of what's in a PET bale isn't really PET. And I should back up and say that PET is the type of plastic that is used to make water bottles and soda bottles. On the next slide, the same thing for HDPE. That's the kind of plastic that is used to make laundry detergent bottles and milk containers. And you can see that the contamination rate there is a little lower in the California study. It's only about 5%. On the slide after that, we've got HDPE colored bales. Again, the loss rate there is about 11%. On the next slide with the orange on it, there we go. So basically the same story repeated over and over. Materials that are going into a material recovery facility are mostly ending up where they're supposed to go, but there are a lot of losses, and cross-contamination is appearing in every different type of material. So on the next slide, we sum it all up. We did the research, we got all of the data, we married two different data sets that were necessary to do these calculations, and we found out that overall, if 100 tons of recyclables are collected at the curb in a single stream recycling process, 75 tons will actually be recycled into new products again, and 25 tons will be landfilled. And a lot of that isn't because there was anything wrong with the material once it was put in the curbside bin. It was because it was sorted improperly and it ended up in the wrong place. Another thing that I wanted to touch on in the next slide was commodity prices. This has been a struggling situation for the last several years throughout the United States. You can see here that it's not important to see the actual individual numbers, but to see the trend line. PET plastic has been losing value for several years, and it's just about leveled out in 2016 now, but you can see it's lost a lot of value since its peak a few years ago. Glass has been losing value in California, and this is mainly because of the mixture of the materials in material recovery facilities and not getting it cleaned well enough. Aluminum cans, it was something completely different. It had to do with overproduction in China and dumping on the worldwide markets that led to a loss in value in that commodity as well. So it's been a difficult situation, and in a time of struggling commodity prices, it's even more important to produce commodities that are as clean as possible, because those are the most desirable. Everybody, if somebody is only going to buy a certain amount of material, they're going to purchase the absolute cleanest stuff they can get. On the next slide, we summarize this. As we seek new policies to increase recycling rates, we need to start reporting what is actually recycled, not just what is collected for recycling. Because if recycling rates are reported without removing yield loss from the contamination, it can lead to inflated recycling rates and even double counting. And our recommendations for companies and municipalities is to, number one, know what's really being recycled. This is on the next slide. Municipalities should know both the MRF contamination rates and the post-MRF contamination rates, and this information should be reported to them throughout the life of the contract. If municipalities are going to spend millions of dollars on a contract, they should know exactly what the yield is from that contract. And we also need to do some further study of the collection economics and understand how much money is really being spent on achieving results that aren't exactly what we wanted to achieve. And we need more research on best practices. So there are little hints of that throughout the next few slides in this presentation. So in the next one, I give a cost example. The cost metric, and these are not specific numbers, these are just hypothetical numbers. But for example, if the cost per ton collected is reported as $100 because you collected so many tons, if you have 8% residual, the cost per ton that you actually recovered that could be made into a new product is actually $109 a ton. And if only 75% of the materials are able to be used in the production of a new product, then your cost per ton is actually $133. So our cost metrics that we're using right now are more like the first one on this slide, the cost per ton collected, and it's giving us false information about what we're actually achieving. The next slide is the suggestion that you follow your materials, and on the slide after that, why this is important. First, you want to be getting what you paid for. You don't want false information reported to you about what your recycling rates were. Then there's also a reputational risk. A lot of companies report publicly what their recycling rate is, and if it's found later to be a different amount, that can be very disappointing to the consumers of your product. And it's also important for employee engagement. They have a lot invested in these programs as well, and they want to be getting correct information. So on the next slide, some recommendations. To add language on material quality to any RFP you have on recycling services, to request a history of quality reports, add that language to your contracts, and request and review the quality reports on a regular basis throughout the entire contract period. On the next slide, we've got an example from the City of Los Angeles, who just has gone through this new process where they have completely rebid all of their contracts in the commercial sector. They're requiring the recycling to go to certified facilities. Their contracts have provisions for better material reporting, and their goal is that higher quality materials will create better jobs locally. So they're also seeing this as a job creator. And we haven't yet seen the results of that because the process is so new, but the City of Los Angeles is really being bold in trying to create better contracts to create better jobs locally. In the next slide, we talk about contract definitions from Santa Fe. Again, this is a city that has just recently gone through this, and we haven't seen the result. And I won't go through these, but I want to include these definitions in case they're helpful to anybody who's on this webinar, and if you want to use those definitions in your own contracts. On the next slide, we have a picture from the city of Sunnyvale. They have 3 cart collections. So the cart on the left is the green waste cart. The cart in the middle, the black one, is their trash cart, and the gray one on the right is their recycling cart. And you can see that it has 2 different lids. They call that a butterfly lid. So they have 2 containers in that cart. One of them is used for paper fibers, and the other one is used for other containers like glass and plastic and aluminum and steel. People have asked me when I show this slide, yes, they have used motor oil collection. That's what's on the curb there in that other bin, or that other bottle. So the next slide is really cool because it shows this cart being dumped into the truck. And I just love it that they somehow got inside this truck and were able to show this, the split truck, and the way it matches up perfectly with the split cart. So the truck actually has 2 compartments, one for fibers and one for containers. And this is called dual stream collection, and it yields much higher quality materials because there's never a chance for any of those containers to cross-contaminate by getting into the fiber. The next slide is a picture of specialized collection of glass in Germany. This happens throughout Europe. So many European countries have separate glass collections. They just never put their glass in curbside collection from residential or commercial. All of the glass is collected separately. And this was in Berlin, and as I walked around the city, I couldn't go for a half mile without seeing another set of these bottle banks. So this is true throughout so much of Europe, and they're able to get really high rates, like 80% of their glass in a particular glass bottle making furnace is recycled content. So those really high rates are possible with a very, very clean stream that everybody is participating in. And the last example is on the next slide, which is glass drop-off points in the Kansas City area through Ripple Glass. And their program has it's only a few years old, but it's so popular that there are other companies that are copying it in Utah and in Colorado, and Ripple Glass is expanding into other parts of the country. And it's all dedicated to just collecting glass and doing so in the cleanest possible way. Lastly, on the next slide, we have our contact information. If you want to reach me and ask questions about this or get more information off of our 2 websites, that information is there. And the last slide, thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Susan. That was absolutely excellent. You gave a perfect overview of where we are, and the challenges that we're experiencing right now with single stream recycling and the contamination factor. And with the elemental impacts presentation, we're going to dive into, we know that single stream I'd like to say it's not working, but I'll go on the record as saying it's a challenge. And so my presentation here is based on solution orientation, and the intent is to be very empowering and positive. I have a lot of information in here. My intention was to make an industry resource. I must go through my slides quickly. So know that it will be available on the EI site and the U.S. Zero Waste Business site for later reference. And we'll start out with just a little bit of overview on the next slide with elemental impact. Our tagline is sustainability in action, and those of you who know us, we don't mess around, we get things done. This is our mission statement. What's important to understand here is we put equally corporate bottom lines and the environment. We are all about making good, solid business sense. And look again, it's education and collaboration. You're going to see later where I talk about the we consciousness. You're not in this alone. We must do this together. And on the next slide, you'll see that EI, we're a catalyst, we're an incubator. We look at what could be done, isn't being done, we get it done. We bring the possible out of impossible, and we identify pioneers, and we create heroes. And we do this through our tri-platform level. We have product stewardship, recycling refinement, and water use and toxicity. And as we dive into the product stewardship, you'll see that it engages the power of consumer demand. I'm going to be ending with this on the power of consumer demand, to know that you are not at the whim of the waste hauler and what they say they can do. You are the one who writes the check. That is important to remember. The next line, partnership with the supply chain. There are so many examples of where you must work with your supply chain to reduce the waste that's coming into your place, and to also reuse things and to use recyclable. And we also, important to focus on the end user. And now the next one is my personal passion, and that's the water footprint and the new sustainability standards. That doesn't quite tie into this PowerPoint, but it is important to me. All right, recycling refinement. And this is moving beyond landfill diversion. And this is my version of what Susan said in her slides. Recycling integrity is maintaining maximum material value with minimal energy expended. And the EI definition of contamination is an expensive trip to the landfill. And those are important concepts as you're working on the business side. I'd like to next establish that EI is a pioneer in recycling. We're in our 7th year of operation, and a quick synopsis is in 2009 we launched the Zero Waste Zones in an acclaimed press conference here in Atlanta, and we were established as the national pioneer in the commercial collection of food waste for compost. It was thrilling. Atlanta Airport, the busiest airport in the world, we must say that 3 times usually, became the first sustainable food court initiative pilot. In 2011, that was followed by Charlotte Simon Mall, Concord Mills, and the Georgia Dome where the Falcons play. And then, as we moved into 2012, it was really exciting. We sold the Zero Waste Zones to the National Restaurant Association. We were done being the pioneers. People knew that recycling was important, that the collection of food waste for composting was important, so it was time for us to move into new realms. In 2014, what an honor. We were named the National Zero Waste Business Council and the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council official media partners. And as you heard me say, we published this year a recycling or contaminant crisis article, and it's a series of articles. We're respected media now. It's thrilling. Just last night, we topped 295,000 100,000 page views on the Zero Waste in Action blog. We have 335 published articles. That's 880 page views per article. And this bottom article, Reduce First, Donate Second, and Compost Third, has over 14,000 page views with just shy of 1,000 page views in the last month. That is, it's gone viral, and it's important to the voice that we created. And to say a little bit more about that article, it was published on November 6th, and it already has 1,600 page views. This is showing you people care. They know we've got a crisis going on, but what is the crisis? And how do we take a positive view and roll it into something that makes good business sense? It's going to be very positive in nature, the series, and the intended topics are waste prevention, the we consciousness, you're going to hear a lot about we consciousness from me, and culture, and hauler and generator responsibility, co-responsibility, working together again. Clear communication is absolutely critical. You must educate whoever is going to be doing the disposal must be educated. And local infrastructure. Grassroots recycling companies play a tremendous role in flexible programs that are unique to the local end markets. All right, let's move in to our recycling business model, a pathway. These are the five, can't count, 5 areas that we're going to be moving through to talk about our business model. So we'll move first into the organization structure and culture. Culture is absolutely critical to a successful long-term program. If we could go to the next slide, please. Because culture dictates what is acceptable workplace behavior. Top management is responsible for that culture because the top management, in general, reports to your board of directors who, quote, report to the shareholders and owners. And remember, this is always important, is your top management are the stewards to your organization's bottom line. And I learned this with a prominent keynote speaker, is you must make sure that your shareholders and owners are on board with your recycling and your overall sustainability initiatives, because sometimes it has short-run investments for long-term overall benefit. And next, you establish a recycling team. A lot of people call them green teams, with representation from across operations, and please include administrations. You must have a team leader that can make decisions, or at least has direct access to a supportive top management person who can make those decisions. Okay, the next one, you're going to see this twice in the presentation. Back, please, is the participation in the recycling program must be written into the employee job description. And that is because when it comes time for performance review, the time that's spent on the recycling must be a positive influence in that review. I've seen the negative side of this, so I'm emphasizing the positive. And you must meet on a regular basis. And now we talk about the we consciousness is absolutely key to program success. And back in the Zero Waste Zone days, our tagline was collaboration is key to success. You have clear programs. You must be, the recycling team establishes the programs and they communicate it clearly to the organization employees across there so everyone has the common goals. You have to be encouraging and rewarding for these new practices. And remember that we consciousness extends beyond your organization. It goes to your suppliers, your purveyors, your customers, and the community at large. And what's so important is to get in that culture and in the mindset and the perceptions that this is valuable material that you discard or you generate as a byproduct of manufacturing. It's not trash. That is huge, is to get that perspective in there, and that clean material is valuable. Contamination reduces your value or renders your material landfill bound, an expense versus revenue. And recognition and sharing in program benefits. That's so important to keep the morale up on the recycling. And then after you set to tone there, you go to recycling, create a recycling baseline. That usually is a waste audit or a materials audit, however you'd like to refer to it. And if you're brand new to this and you're a reasonably large operation, know that there are third-party contractors out there that will perform an audit, develop your recycling program, and charge you based on cost savings. That means you have no upfront out-of-pocket costs other than your employees' time to participate in this. Your green team must attend your audit to literally see the valuable material being taken to the landfill. And it really helps if you can get top management in there. Mitsubishi, back at the 2013 National Zero Waste Business Council, I remember them talking about top management coming in, and they saw all of the disposable coffee cups that were being thrown out, and they found it. Then they said, tell me what that cost is. They replaced them with reusables, saved money and saved trash. Document an audit and with a review for a video and still photos for review. And please make it fun, make it empowering, lighten up. That's important. And when you get rolling, the important thing is you identify your easy wins. Your high value items and your large quantity in general are your easy wins. You've got to look at your local end markets. What is available locally? And in Atlanta, we're lucky. We have strong local markets. And are there grassroots haulers out there that will pick up smaller glass or things and deliver them directly, sell them directly to the manufacturer? And commit to on-site source separation. That's absolutely key. I think Susan established that single stream is not the way to generate clean material. And craft an organization map of where your materials are generated so you can determine where are the best sorting methods. And next, you employ the reconsciousness within program development. You remember, it's the community at large. You join your local and state recycling associations. They're an invaluable resource. And you collect with your governments, their recycling departments. They do great connections and they give you support. And you meet with local companies with successful recycling programs. You benefit from their lessons learned and recycling connections, and then commit to share with yours. This picture here is the Director of Sustainability, Tim Tresfer, sharing with the new Mercedes-Benz Falcon Stadium and others. There's Novellis in there, but the point is he's sharing with what they're doing. And next, when you create your recycling baseline, you need source-separated clean material. Understand that that's the foundation for your profit center. And that dual stream may work, what Susan told us earlier, if you're a smaller company. If you're larger, you can go to source separation. And next, on our program parameters, total materials management approach is absolutely critical. And there you evaluate your entire material streams into one cost and revenue center. You start with your easy wins and those items, which are generally aluminum, mixed paper, and certain plastics, and they will subsidize your more challenging options such as food waste and often glass. Establish a metric system. It's important to track your program. In order to validate that this makes good business sense, you must know what your tonnages were and what your revenues were. And balers are absolutely key to on-site material source separation. The normal 60-inch downstroke for standard size bales work great for large generators. For the small generators, this ORWAC baler on the side is an absolute key. This picture here was taken in an Atlanta airport Starbucks back of the house. So I don't take excuses that we don't have room. We can always find room. Okay, next we move on to clear communication and training. And you must establish these programs at the launching and get your program administrators involved, your employees, and include the whys. Keep it light and fun. Is this not hysterical? I love this, the Lorax Recycling Center at Georgia Tech. They did a big competition on their recycling centers in their new building. I like the next one. Host lunch and learns for employees with the recycling company. One, it shows top management is serious about the program. They're willing to invest in paying for the employee time and a lunch and learn. But you know what else? These recycling companies' associates, they can share you in a very personal way the cost of contamination. That's important. All right, going on our clear and communication and that. You want to be multilingual language. Can't even talk. Signage, it's critical because, you know, we're a multicultural population these days. Images are fantastic, and you use your product samples when you can. Infographics and employee break areas. This is at the Earth Friendly Products break room area, that picture. And you use reusables where you can, where it's feasible, and if it's not, use recyclable and compostable with nearby bins, and address if employees can bring trash to work. All right, continuing on, best bin practices. Very important. You always place, until you get totally zero waste, always have a trash bin with your recycling bins. Use bins with holes that match the material collection. You want them at eye level, and you want the images to convey the sorting, and you strategically place. Okay, next one's big. I did not realize this, that ice is the biggest contaminant in many of these single stream recycling. And if you could go back for just a second, I wanted to show you that that's at the Portland Airport, and they have a place to dispose of your water. Okay, that's key. All right, next one is the back of the house recycling systems. That's where the biggest things are going to be, the majority of your high value. And you set, again, up in a convenient place. You use your balers. Gaylords work great for separating if you don't have the big plastic ones. You're probably going to need some forklifts and a storage area to accumulate for sufficient quantity for collection. All right, next. And the administration of your recycling system. You want to require active participation. With your janitorial staff can collect the recycling, but in the administration, let the employees take the trash to the landfill, provide written information, and monitor for contamination and mistakes. All right, and you also want to make sure that your janitorial staff and contractor is on board. You use that we consciousness approach. And if you do use a third-party contractor as you're coming up on your renewals, it's important to include provisions in that contract. And you want to get employee input on what can be collected throughout your facility. Next. Very important to recognize it and promote success for your recycling team, for your organizations. I like the last one. And consider a bonus program based on recycling profits. Ricoh Copiers does that. All right, next. And community recognition. This is incredibly important. You know, this is your metrics. You quantify your programming stats, then you issue press releases, you get certified, you get your team out there speaking at conferences, at webinars, you apply for zero waste certifications. You want to share your challenges, lessons learned, and successes just like was shared with you in the beginning. Okay, next. This is key. It's its own slide. Take baby steps. Lots and lots of baby steps. Most failures have occurred because they came in with great intentions and they tried to do everything at once. And now we're going to move to our recycling success stories. Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, sorry. The Circle D. They're zero waste certified, and I love this, what all they compost. And when I first heard about the laundry lint, I had to go to Mary Alice and say, oh, and she says, Holly, it's organic cotton material, calm down. All right, and then they were the first customer down in Orlando for the Harvest Power Anaerobic Digester. Look at this. Look at their donations. They feed 1,400 children weekly with their donations. It's huge. And I always love the manure things. 4,000 tons of manure was sent to a local compost facility. And the Cincinnati Zoo has great stats on that too. All right, the next is the Georgia Institute of Technology. This is the amazing Cindy Jackson. I love Cindy Jackson. Look at the bottom. She never succumbed to single stream recycling. And her award-winning recycling programs, that was back in 2008 and 2009 when no one was doing these things. Okay, next. And these are some of her stats down. Now, they just record their revenue. So this $60,242 in soft markets only relates to their revenue, their rebates. It does not relate to cost savings, so it's significantly more. Okay, next. I have one more
Holly,
minute.
we got about a minute, yeah, before we
I
take
know,
questions.
that's why I'm telling you to go. Earth-friendly products, all 5 of their plants are certified, okay? They use strong employee engagement. That's their employee dining area. Next. Next. Okay, they have strict recycling standards, and Navera goes out to also their suppliers and make sure that they do, and they ban styrofoam. Okay, next. All right, they use source separation on site. Next. All right, Sierra Nevada, they were the first Zero Waste Platinum certified, and they are very source separated revenue, source separation oriented as everyone else is. Please go to the next slide. Okay, this is their stats. You can look at those later if you'd like, but look at that. That's during soft recycling markets. Okay, next. Okay, they emphasize closing the loop and continue, and we move on to Piazza Produce, our final recycling success, and they are Gold Waste, Zero Waste certified. Look at this, 2015 soft recycling markets, and they generated just shy of $300,000 in recycling profits. That's key, and this is Scott's famous saying down here about cash in your trash, and we'll go to the next slide. And this just shows some of their stats. They go to the nth with their metrics, and they use a third-party provider. And their keys to Recycling Profit Center is clean source separation material, teamwork across, and working closely with your partners. And look at this, $1.75 million in recycling, compost, and waste diversion savings since they started in 2006. And next should be the end. All righty, turning it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Holly. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to question and answer. So if you have not submitted your question yet, go ahead and type it into that question box now. And I'll go ahead and kick it off. So this question probably can be answered by either of you. Does it typically pay for a business to prevent contamination of their recycling streams? How would that work in most cases?
Okay, the answer is absolutely yes. Prevention is one of the, just like reduction, is the first step in zero waste. Prevention of contamination is absolutely huge, and the way I see it is you start with clean, clear communication of source separation on site to make sure that it is disposed of properly, and that would prevent the majority of the contamination. Susan?
Completely agreed. It puts you in such a better position to deal with whoever your recycling contractor is. If you're the one that's producing really clean material, you're going to be their favorite customer.
Awesome. Okay. Let me see here. Can everyone hear me okay? Hello?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, great. Susan, in your mind, what should haulers be hauling when, and what should businesses be hauling separately? Glass seems to be one, but what are other contaminants, and what could or should be separated out, like food?
Well, the most common ones that are already done by businesses that have been handled separately for many years, if not many decades, are cardboard and other paper products. If they're in an area where they can take it directly to a mill or a paper broker, and the same is true with metal. Those are the most commonly available in the most places throughout the United States. And then food waste is completely dependent on whether or not there's a processor in your area who can take it.
Awesome. This is a really great question. Where does the most work need to be done? Should we focus on better sorting methods, better collection, better metrics, better policies, or what?
I would say,
Yeah.
okay, this is Holly. I would say to start with better sorting, and because once you get the better sorting, now you're going to create the value, and the others will fall into place. You do need to have, all of those are important because the metrics will then say how much you've collected, so you can go to your markets, find out where they can be hauled, and that there's also, I think, needs to be some infrastructure that's developed. We started the source separated material recycling template that was designed for moderate generators. It kind of mirrored off of the zero waste zones, so there could be collections of these materials in smaller quantities, because that's been one of the challenges. Susan?
Yeah, and I would also say that the places over the more than 25 years that I've been in this business, the times that I see the most large-scale, massive changes have been when either laws came into effect at the statewide level or when major municipalities or county groups put in large-scale policies saying, okay, what we've been doing before, we're going to do it in a different way, and everybody's going to do it that way. Because once there is some sort of a broad mandate and a real mandate with teeth, then all of the details end up getting worked out. If there isn't an infrastructure, certainly some entrepreneur is going to come in and say, oh, I see a clear need for infrastructure here. Let's get that built. I know I'm going to have customers for that. So when a big policy is put in place, either at the state level or by a big municipality, then you see big movement.
Thank you. Okay, this question is directed to Susan. Not long ago, municipalities were encouraged to go single stream to maximize the collection of material. Now that investments have been made in these programs, are you suggesting that these programs be changed now?
Yes, I am. I'm seeing that we've hit a plateau and we're even backsliding when it comes to single stream. We have seen that entire countries elsewhere in the developed world have used dual stream and are using that very successfully and are achieving high quantity levels and high quality levels at the low cost, what I talked about as being recycling nirvana. And I absolutely think that instead of sliding backwards and taking materials out of the recycling stream, which is what's happening in some places in the U.S., that we should move forward with those types of programs that have been demonstrated time and time again to be the best performers.
Awesome. Okay. This question, I guess, could be addressed to either of you. How long will it take my business to reasonably see tangible results? I guess what they're referring to is, the cost savings and the addition to the bottom line for doing source separation and recycling programs.
This is Holly. That's going to vary on your company, what you're already doing, the quantities that you generate, the value of the material that you generate. If you generate a whole lot of aluminum cans and it's clean, and a whole lot of clean office paper that you haven't been doing before, those are your high value, easily recyclable, good markets, and you should be able to achieve a recycling profit right away. But the final slide I was going to do was, this is a journey. There's not necessarily a destination, and it takes some time. I mean, Scott Lataka can tell you that of what he's done at Piazza Produce. He's been working on this for 10 years. So you keep refining, and I can't give you an exact time frame, but you start, like I said, with easy wins, which are your high values and your largest quantities.
Great. Okay. So twofold question. How do I approach my waste hauler to discuss diversion options. If my current waste hauler is not willing nor able to assist with waste diversion practices, how can I find out if I can terminate the current service agreement or find out the procedure and time frame for preventing the service agreement from auto-renewing?
Okay, first, the auto-renewing is, that was the evergreen clause, and I hope people are not doing the evergreen clauses anymore. That was common back when I started about 10 years ago. So the first thing you need to do is to review your contract and go in and see what types of clauses they have. Most people do not have clauses more than 3 years. You have to find out who owns the material. And some waste hauling contracts are such that you don't have the option to use anybody else, okay? Others have it where it's just based on a pickup and you can do whatever else you want to do with your recyclables or whatever. So each contract is going to be unique, and what I highly advise is when your next contracts are coming up for renewal is that you get yourself well informed, you have your waste audit done beforehand, you have a game plan there, and so when you're going into negotiations with your waste hauler or whoever it is, your recycler, that you do a nice solid contract that protects you and keeps you so you can have a solid recycling program in place. And remember the power of consumer demand. If you're getting close, especially if you're a bigger customer, if you're getting close to your renewal, they will usually work with you prior to your contract expiration because they want you to renew with them. Power of consumer demand. It's important.
Awesome. Okay, with that, we have hit 12 o'clock noon Pacific, 3 o'clock East Coast, so we're going to wrap up the webinar. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope you go out into your organizations and start creating some positive change both for your business and for our environment. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll hopefully see you back on our webinar series next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.